As the Breeders' Cup action continues, you know the best place to play it. If you don't, you do now. It's NYRA Bets. Head on over to NYRABets.com. Use that promo code BC19, matching up to $200 in your initial play with a $25 risk-free bet on Breeders' Cup weekend in either the Juvenile or the Classic. The Breeders' Cup Mile on the turf. Always one of the more fun races on Breeders' Cup weekend, and boy, is this Breeders' Cup Mile wide open. You've got the usual complement of Europeans as well as the U.S.-based runners, including Uni. And I will say that if Uni duplicates her performance that we're looking at here in the First Lady against the girls at Keeneland, she's probably going to win here. But this is a much different scenario. I don't think she's going to get nearly the pace that she got in this race at Keeneland. She did not draw well with post number 11, and she's going to have to come back and duplicate this effort. Don't get me wrong. I have a lot of respect for Uni, but I think it's going to be tough to duplicate that performance. And at a short price in this race, I'm going to use some others, though she'll be in my play. What do you do with Got Stormy? Got Stormy easily beat Uni and the boys up in Saratoga in a wicked pace four-star day that collapsed. But what I think gives Got Stormy somewhat of an edge is she has more speed than Uni, so she's not going to be particularly compromised by what's showing to be a slower pace. Uni couldn't close behind her. One of the things that hurt Uni in here, and it wasn't the fall of the rider, it was just the way the chips fell, is she was trying to close between horses. And closers like Uni, they need to get out in the clear and make their run. Now, she won't have a problem doing that from post number 11, but Got Stormy's got more speed. What worries me about Got Stormy is that was her second race in just a week. She had run very well to win the De La Rose. They came back in a week, and it worked out, winning the four-star Dave, but she didn't run as well when she came back a month later up in Canada. Now she's had some more time to regroup, but can she come back and run as brilliantly as she did in the four-star Dave? Because really, that's the only race she's ever run that makes her a major player. The other races make her a fringe player. And at a short price, I kind of want to see it to believe it. I'm not using anybody out of the Shadwell Turf Mile at Keeneland. We'll take a look at Bowie's Hero getting it done. Soudois finished third in here. I'm going to tell you something. Jamie Spencer gave Soudois a tremendous ride, and he does go from post number 12 in this race to post number 1 and Javier Castellano for the Breeders' Cup Turf. Still, I just don't know if he's good enough. I think other Europeans are better, and I don't think Bowie's Hero is good enough. Frankly, the horse that ran best in here is Diamond Ops. Diamond Ops connection settled for the Breeders' Cup Dirt Sprint, the tougher race. They should have run back in the Breeders' Cup Mile because he'd have been the controlling speed, and he ran very well at Keeneland, but I don't want the players from that race. Now, Circus Maximus is the 3-to-1 morning line favorite, and he comes over from Europe for Aidan O'Brien, who has not had a lot of success in this race. In fact, I don't think he's ever won it. What Circus Maximus has, though, is speed, and this is his narrow victory over the very talented Romanized in the Prix de Moulin at Longchamp. He's been very good. He won the St. James's Palace. Too darn hot, reversed the decision when he came back and he beat him narrowly in the Sussex. He couldn't get the mile in 5/16 of the Juddmonte International in his next start, but at miles, he has been extremely good, and he can be forwardly placed, and I think that's going to work in his favor. But I don't want him at a short price in this race. I'm not thrilled with the horses. Aidan O'Brien does not have great numbers coming overall into America or in the Breeders' Cup races. He's on a losing streak in the Breeders' Cup races, and I don't need him as the favorite, but I do respect his talent and I respect his speed. What about Lord Glitters? Lord Glitters comes over for the very dangerous David O'Meara, who has had real success coming over here. And you can say, well, he went over the Woodbine Mile last year and he didn't run well at all. Well, he got no pace to run at that day. And he is a horse that's much better on firmer turf, as evidenced when he got that in the Queen Anne. Now, I don't think this Queen Anne field that he's beating, and look at that gray battling between horses. He's a cool horse, an easy one to see the gray for a game win, but I don't think this was a particularly strong Queen Anne. And he has gotten turf with more give, particularly in his recent race in the Queen Elizabeth. But still, he couldn't come close to Circus Maximus, though he did have somewhat of an excuse with a troubled trip in the Sussex. I didn't like Lord Glitters, but I can understand why some might use him. His post did him no favors. How about the number 3 Space Traveler? And we'll take a look at Space Traveler winning a Group 2 in his last race. This is at Ascot. I like this horse. I think he's an improving horse that is good enough to win the race. The problem with Space Traveler is he doesn't have any speed. and he's got more of a running style like Uni, and I'm not sure he's as good as Uni, but he did draw much better than Uni in this race. He's like a fringe player for me. He's actually my 5th pick. You won't see my top 4, but there's a lot of horses you could use in here, and I think Space Traveler is kind of an interesting 3-year-old that might be improving at the right time. But there are others to talk about in here, and we did not get any video for my top choice, but let's talk about Hey Gammon. Okay, Hey Gammon didn't draw well with post 13, but getting Frankie Dettorio for this race, that's going to help him. And why am I picking Hey Gammon in here? Because I think he's good enough, and he's going to be a big price. But let me talk about him while you look at those picks. And we still need to talk about Luke Cullen as well. So let's take the picks down, talk about them. We'll get the picks up again in a second. Hey Gammon needs firm turf. The reason he hasn't run well in his last 2 starts is he's gotten soft ground. Look at his prior efforts. And when you see those good courses, they're good to firm over in Europe. He only finished second to Romanized. We saw finish second to Circus Maximus. And I think Hey Gammon, getting Frankie Dettori, is an interesting player, and he's also a horse that has speed. And I'll bet Frankie Dettori uses that speed to his advantage. So he's my long shot pick in here over Luke Cullen. We didn't show any video for Luke Cullen, who gets in off the also eligibles, but anybody that's followed my picks knows I like Luke Cullen. He didn't run as well when he ran the Woodbine Mile. I still respect him. I loved his effort in the Knickerbocker. I know he's coming back on short rest, but I think he has been a very, very good horse this year for Kieran McLaughlin. He's going to be a big price. He drew well from post number 2, and a race that I think is a real crapshoot. I want to use horses at prices. So let's take a look at those picks again. The 13, Lord Gammon, over the 2, Luke Cullen. I got Uni in there. I have Circus Maximus in there. Even my 5th choice, the number 3, Space Traveler, will be somewhere in my play. This is a wide open race. I didn't use Got Storby, but obviously she can win. A lot of horses can win what is a very contentious and fun Breeders' Cup Mile on the turf that I'll be playing through NYRA Bets. Head on over to NYRA Bets. If you're not a member, use promo code BC19. We'll match up the $200 for the new members, but also a $25 risk-free bet for new members on the Breeders' Cup Juvenile or the Classic. Details at NYRABets.com as the Breeders' Cup action continues.